Welcome to the Alumni Lounge. On today's episode, we've got Graham Carlson, and he is a Community Engagement Manager at Fair Game.
That's right. I'm happy to be here. Hi, I'm Graham Carlson, class of 2005 from Lyons Township High School, and I am the Community Engagement Manager at Fair Game, which is a board game store in Downers Grove, Grange, and Geneva. There was a time that I could fill with some kind of school activity, I did it. I had a lot of eccentric teachers, I felt like. I used to be really big into video games, and that kind of transitioned over to playing tabletop games. If you feel the spark, go after it, pursue it. It can even be a job.
So, Graham.
David.
How's it going?
It's going great.
Yeah?
I'm glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation to the Alumni Lounge.
Oh.
This beautiful studio we have set up here. This is awesome, man.
So, tell us a little bit about your LT experience.
Yeah, so I graduated LT in 2005, and I was definitely one of those kids that was way over involved. Like if there was a time that I could fill with some kind of school activity, I did it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think I planned everything around the sports schedule. I was running cross country in the fall, track in the spring, and I did that freshman, sophomore, and junior year. So in the wintertime, I sort of had that after school time slot open up. Now I did band and stuff. So there was definitely some, some extra stuff that came out of that. But, and I was on the math team, very important. Don't forget that. And so we did some competitions throughout the wintertime. But all that to say, after school in the winter, I had some time. And so that's kind of how I first started getting involved with LTTV. Then my senior year, I stopped doing sports, and so the whole year just really opened up for me. And so I remember getting more involved with other things that I'd wanted to spend more time on, right? So I was definitely still involved with band and math team, and then I did some theater stuff as well my senior year, and then I got more involved with LTTV.
Were there any teachers that you looked up to, or any teachers that you remember the most?
Oh, I had a lot of eccentric teachers, I felt like. And so in some ways I really understood them and their artistry. I think you got to be kind of eccentric to be a teacher anyway, right? If you're what would be fun is if I just talked about this subject that I loved to a bunch of people that didn't know anything about it. You got to have a certain personality for that. So I had a couple good English teachers, which is actually kind of funny because I don't consider I was not an English kid, right? I did the math stuff, the math and the science. So, I had Mr. Foley for chemistry, Mr. Brown for English, Mr. Aletto for English when he had, he hadn't been at LT that long at the time.
Right.
He was sort of this is early 2000s. I think he's class of 92. So he was just 10 years out of school, still in his 20s. And we're he's one of the cool teachers, So, that's kind of, those are some of the people that I gravitated towards.
Right.
At the time, Mr. Foskett was doing LTTV, and so I really enjoyed getting to know him a little bit. I really liked, what was his name? He was a younger guy that took over part of the band. Miss Dietrich was doing band at South Campus, and then Mr. Dahl took over for her. And I really liked both of them as well.
So you came in right at when he was new.
Yeah. Well, because I think he was actually the band director at Highlands Elementary in middle school for a little bit. And I think I met him doing that. And that's all sticking out to me because I was also involved in the Boy Scouts a whole lot, and Mr. Dahl was an Eagle Scout, and so we had him come out to a meeting and talk to us, and that was really cool.
I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah. Little factoid. It's weird when you think of your teachers and you only know them in the school environment. It's they only exist, from 7 to 4 p.m. on weekdays, and then they just evaporate into the walls, and then they rematerialize before school starts. So it's weird to see them outside of the school building, right? And having them come out to my Boy Scout meeting. It's like when you see someone in an environment that you're not used to seeing them, or like you have two friend groups that meet up and you're like, you guys shouldn't know each other. I know you guys from summer camp and I know you guys from, college. And like, how do you know each other? You know, that kind of thing. So.
Right. Oh my goodness. Do you have any memories about Brownstock?
I remember hearing so much about Brownstock, but I was so involved that like I never felt like I got to go. I mean, you really can only go when you're a junior or a senior anyway, unless you're part of the production. So I had friends that did WLTL or friends that were really involved with LTTV, and so they would like get out of school for the day to go and run, several periods worth of Brownstock performances. But I think I only saw Brownstock for like one period once. And it was probably when I was in Mr. Brown's English class. Aside from that, I didn't get a chance to be involved with that, but it was definitely like the talk of the school for the week that it happened.
What are some memories you have of LTTV?
I remember LTTV first because I had a friend that pulled me into it. Mike Stevens, shout out to my boy. He pulled me into it. He said, hey, we're looking for someone to do, I know you like this video stuff. We are looking for someone to do graphics at our basketball games. And I was like, I don't know what that entails, but I'm intrigued. So, it was mostly coming out to those live broadcasts and changing the score that shows up on the screen, right? Which, it was all set up for me by the LTTV pros. So it was not a very complicated job, but it was a regular thing that I got to do and really get the feeling for what a broadcast was like. From there, I started doing camera work at a couple of the different sporting events. I mentioned that my senior year kind of opened up. So I remember I did a couple of shoots of, football in the fall, continued doing basketball and swimming, I think. And then I did volleyball in the spring. So there was a bunch of different events that I got to do. I got more comfortable with doing camera work and stuff. What I ultimately really like about video creation and media content is the editing and the post-production. However, in order to make a good pizza, you got to have good ingredients, right? Papa John's tells us this all the time, the book of Papa John's. So having good footage and being able to operate a camera well is integral to be able to create good content, right? Just like what we're doing now, you've spent time thinking about the lighting and the background and how far your camera's away and, what angles do you want on our faces? And that's the kind of stuff that I learned first at LTTV doing these live shoots,
right,
where you're not going to fix stuff in post. This is a broadcast, right? You do it right the first time and hopefully things go smoothly. That's kind of how live works, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So that was a lot of my LTTV experience. I was also a part of a video contest, and you have to remind me the name of it. But
are you talking about CTEC?
Yeah.
Chicagoland High School Video Festival.
Yeah, so it was like all these different schools would come out. They would submit their videos, and then they'd have these video professionals like give them ratings, like score them on like a scoring rubric, and then they would give out awards based on the tier of your score, right? So I was a silver award winner. Well, to be fair, I think it's like, did you make a video? If it does not count as a video, you don't qualify. Otherwise, you get at least a silver. So I don't think it was that prestigious, but yeah, I mean, it was dumb, right? Like in theory, I was a writer and actor on this. Well, this was just a bunch of like 15 and 16-year-old dudes being dumb in someone's backyard and videotaping it. And then our friend Mike was the one who actually edited it, and he edited it on like, was it linear editing, right? Where it's the actual tape. And so you're kind of like moving it around with the dials, and you got to figure out where to cut it and that kind of stuff. He did a marvelous job. And if he didn't edit it the way that it was, it would not have qualified as a video, and we would not have gotten said silver award. So, but yeah, it was very Monty Python style of humor. And we were just really being stupid, but I think even taking that dumb video, but then going to this award ceremony was a really good experience, because it sort of said, hey, this is not just a way to make dumb vines with your friends. Like this there's a storytelling medium here, and there's something about it that just made it feel more regal, more professional, you know? So I loved going to CTech. That was great.
Since you were very involved in TV, like, well, what was Foskett like?
Yeah. So, Foskett is a great dude. He was very, very passionate about getting kids invested in TV as a profession, right? So what was great about him is that you're in high school, you don't know what to do with your life, and everyone tells you go to college or, you know, at least graduate so you don't have to work in a factory. Because if you don't graduate, now you're going to, you know, now you got problems. Mm-hmm. But there's kind of the hole there of like skilled labor, right? Like, what if you aren't a college kid, or you're certainly not, you don't want to be a grad school kid. I never wanted to go to grad school. Yeah. I hate writing papers, and it seems like all I'm going to do is write papers on subjects that I love, to the point that now I don't love those things anymore. So, you know, I was not really keen on that trajectory, certainly when I was 17, right? So you've got the kids that want to do college, and then you've got the kids that definitely don't want to do college and are maybe just trying to push their way to get their diploma, and that would be an achievement for them, right? But now you've got this huge gap in the middle that want to be professionals that contribute to society and want to do something great, but aren't like you know, they don't want to read a billion books and become a professor. Well, that's where skilled labor comes in. And so skilled labor, typically you think of it as like trades, right? So your plumbing, your carpentry, whatever. But I really think video work is absolutely like this high-end trade that is just as much of a skill that you develop by doing it as it is anything else.
Right.
And I think Foskett was really aware of that. He had a lot of experience in the broadcasting industry. And so he knew that there were kids that maybe would feel like they're kind of out of place at these two extremes, but could find a home in video. And so he was really passionate about that. That was really cool to work with him.
And then just the other thing, that kids need to get more into skilled trades.
Oh, absolutely. Right. And video is one where you can go to college and you do get your degree in video. And so, you know, now you have a bachelor's, which is great, but you're also, like, as part of getting that bachelor's degree in video, you are very likely also getting your foot in the door with a media company through like an internship or something. And so you're like off to the races. And to me, that makes that kind of higher education totally worth it. So I just think it's an awesome attitude to have for LTTV and for any high school media department. And it's something that I think Foskett was very keenly aware of.
Where did you go to college?
So I went to a small liberal arts school called Hope College, which is in West Michigan. It's in a town called Holland. And I picked that because it was the right distance away. Like, I wanted to be able to drive home on a weekend. I didn't want to have to like book a flight or something or do like this big 6-hour drive. But at the same time, I didn't really want to go to school anywhere too close because I wanted to get away from my parents a little bit, just have some comfortable space, make sure that my mom's not like coming out to yell at me about how I didn't do my laundry or something like that. And then I was nervous about, I guess I just wasn't that comfortable going to a school in Chicago itself. Like, I love people. I get the energy from going into the city. But I just didn't really want to. Do you want me to re-record that?
No.
Okay. I just didn't really want to I wanted my campus to have an identity. I think that's what it was. I liked the idea of going to a school and it was like its own little bubble. And that really appealed to me. And I was disenchanted by how big some of the state schools were, right? Everyone talks about going to U of I, and U of I is like its own city, right? There's tens of thousands of people that are there. And you could say the same thing about a lot of other state schools in Illinois or outside of Illinois. And so just the Big Ten stuff, the Division I size school just didn't appeal to me as much. So I ended up going to Hope College, and there's things I liked about it. There's things I didn't like about it. I think the things I enjoyed about it were like specifically being there. I think the community was great. The community of students, right? I felt like I was a big fish in a small pond, which is kind of a cool feeling. Although, I was aware of it at the time. So when I left the school, I knew that I was going to, move on from that feeling, which was the case. The things I didn't like about it, I just didn't feel like they did a great job of preparing me for the real world. Capital R, capital W. Like, I don't know. I think
That
there's
makes
some
sense.
things. Yeah. Like, I was a communication major, but at the time they didn't require communication internships of their majors. Right. So I didn't actually get any job experience while I was a student. And so then I was trying to apply for jobs that, just needed a college degree, and there weren't that many around at the time. I graduated at a time when there wasn't just jobs going around that were very plentiful. So, I think that was
So
that was hard.
after college, what did you end up doing? Like, what did you end up going into? Or...
So I was having trouble getting anything full-time, anything that could actually use my degree. And so I was like, well, I can live at home with my parents, or I can move out and, light a candle under my butt in terms of like paying rent, paying bills, and just try to, make my way in the world while I kind of figured out what direction I wanted to go in. I think there was good and bad things about this plan because they didn't really have much in the way of actual progress forward. So I just found the jobs that I could find, which was largely like food service. I was a server and a bartender for a while. I worked for a couple nonprofits during the first couple of years after school, but it was like, basically like paid volunteer work where it wasn't very specialized, wasn't really using my degree. And then eventually I landed a job back at Hope College about 5 years after I graduated, where I was a fundraiser. So again, using that communications degree, but also just kind of using the connections that I had back at the school to even find out about the job. So it wasn't anything about my education or my skill set. It was more the networking aspect. Now, fundraising is like, if you've got a big personality like me, you like talking to people, like fundraising's not a bad spot to be in necessarily. Specifically, I was doing mass market fundraising. So there's kind of two categories, right? You've got your very dedicated reps that manage these donor profiles. And so those are the people that you're asking for $5, $10, $20, $100,000 from or more, right? And then you've got everybody else that says, hey, you loved going to school here, right? Wasn't this a great time? Don't you want to give that to the next generation? Why don't you give us $25 this year? Why don't you give us 50, And so the mass market is sort of like the greater alumni audience. Instead of cultivating a few powerful donors, it's more like just maintaining and engaging an existing donor base. And so that was the side of things that I was on. Some of the skills that I was using, the communication stuff, was I was writing a lot of mass market emails, so a lot of copywriting, putting some stuff up on the website, contributing towards the overall like public relations of the site in terms of trying to make things feel more personal. Because you don't want to donate to a faceless organization that's just a logo. Like you want to donate to, I want to donate to Donna and Samuel. Those are the people that I like over at that institution. They're doing great work. I want to support them.
Yeah.
So the other aspect that I was doing was I ran the student call center. So the plague of calls that everyone gets that's like, hey, I just wanted to talk to you about your college experience. And you know that it's all kind of ramp it up to a donation, right? So no one likes that, but at the same time, there's some cool aspects to being able to keep in touch with your college. And so I think a lot of people put up with it because they were ultimately happy to donate. And rather than just filling out a form online, they got a chance to actually talk to like a current student and hear about that experience and kind of, give you the warm fuzzies of the nostalgia of your own experience in college. And so, that was largely how I was using my communication stuff, was teaching kids to be professional and how to talk to people,
And then now, how did you get into the gaming stuff?
Yeah. So I ultimately decided that fundraising was not for me. If I wanted to continue along that career path, I would be I would be moving up to engaging, a portfolio of donors. And I don't know if it's because I think of myself as more of a man of the common people or whatever, but there was something about that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And I was like, I don't know if I want to keep doing this. I want to find something else. So I didn't want to live in Michigan anymore either. So I just kind of packed up my things and said, I'm moving out of here. So I moved back to Illinois, and while I'm trying to figure out what exactly I'm going to do, I was doing a lot of odds and ends. So I was, doing some handyman work. I was helping some like neighbors and friends out that were like my friends' parents' age with projects because they just weren't as able-bodied anymore. And during that time, at the end of my Michigan tenure and moving back to Illinois, I got really into tabletop gaming. So yeah, I used to be really big into video games, and that kind of transitioned over to playing tabletop games. So I'm talking like board games, Dungeons and Dragons, and other role-playing games, like miniatures games or wargaming. And there was pretty much always something that I really enjoyed. And I think I liked it because there's something about that event. There's something like when you're 24, you're like, hey, friends, let's come over, hang out. What are we going to do? I don't know. I'll put something on TV and we'll drink. Cool. That's fine. But after a while, that kind of loses its luster, especially once you start to filter out like the people that you're not as close to. And so you're just left over with like the same core group of friends. And you just drinking and talking with the same group of people every week for years is, you kind of want something to do. And that's where the tabletop games come in, right? It's sort of like, hey guys, let's all come over on Friday and we're going to play Settlers of Catan. Like that. I'm super excited to get that back to the table. And we're excited about the game, but it's also the excuse to hang out. It's the thing that we get to do and talk to each other. Right. It was a great way for me to make friends in Michigan. And then when I moved back here, it was a great way for me to make friends again as an adult. So overall, I loved the hobby. I thought it was a ton of fun. And then a board game store opened up a second location in downtown LaGrange. So that store is called Fair Game. They have a store in Downers Grove. That one's been there. At the time, it had been there about 10 years. And then they opened up this other store. Right. So I was like, well, I'm not doing much of anything in terms of like steady work. So, I might as well apply to work here. And one of the things that I could cite was that I had produced some board game content. So as part of my hobby and around, I had gotten so excited about, like some of these games come out with expansions all the time. They come out with more and more stuff to talk about, particularly if you're getting into like the card game realm or like a miniatures game realm. The model is that you buy into the game and then they're going to release new content every couple of months. And so there's always something new to talk about. And there's always things that are shaking up the game. And you come back and you repeatedly play that game. Usually you have some way to customize what you're bringing. So it's not just like a board game where I'm playing the orange player. It's more like, this is my army and I've chosen to have like these specific troops on the table or these characters. Or with a card game, it's, you build a deck from your collection of cards. And so they release new cards. There's new options to put into your deck. So all that to say, the first like year or so that I moved back to Illinois, I produced a podcast about one of my favorite card games at the time. It was called Netrunner. It's gone out of print since then. Yeah. But it's like a cyberpunk game. So think like Blade Runner or Ghost in the Shell. It's a card game that just takes place in that kind of universe. It's really unique. It's for two people. And so you can like play in like a tournament style, right? Where you earn points for every game that you win. And I just thought it was a ton of fun. So I start producing this podcast. And over the next year and a half, I make like 20 episodes. And over that time, I gotten about 1,000 downloads for each. So, wow. It's not nothing. It's very niche, right? Like either you're into this game and you want to listen to content, or you have no idea that the game even exists. And you're like, not the target market, which I feel like is, there's podcasts that are just very general purpose, you know, and that if you're a celebrity, I'm sure your podcast does great or whatever, or you get big in the podcasting scene, you know, or you're into like this really super niche thing, and that's what your podcast is about. So, so yeah, I produced this podcast, and then I got to put it on my resume when I applied at the game store, and I said, I have 20,000 downloads on my podcast, which is technically true, right? So I end up getting a job at the game store, and it's a small mom and pop business, right? So when you get a job there, it's not like you're working at Target where it's like, this is your department and these are your expectations and we're going to pay you this. And like, that's your job.
You're a part of the family.
Yeah. You really are. And so any kind of initiative that you can take to further the business is really big. And, you know, unfortunately there's not a lot of middle to upper management, because there's like 10 people that work at this company, right? So there's not going to be like someone who can oversee you and say like, hey, I want you to do this and work on this. So I was sort of, as part of being hired, given this sort of carte blanche overview of, Graham, I want you to make content. Can you just write a couple blogs about stuff that you're interested in? Yeah. And I was maybe thinking about like doing a YouTube channel, but I don't really know what that content looks like. So over the next couple of years, I'm working part-time at this place, and I'm kind of throwing around some ideas. And then when I start shopping around for other jobs, for like full-time work, my boss pulls me aside and says, I would actually really love for you to work here full-time and use some of your media creation background to further this business. So that's kind of, that's what I'm doing now. My job description feels like it is very, it's elusive. It's constantly like kind of shifting.
Changing.
Yeah. And again, it's because it's a small company, you know, but, I don't know. It's been a really good experience. It's forced me to learn how to be self-driven on some projects and to dive back into some of this media background that, you know, I studied in college, didn't get to use after college for years. I started doing this podcast, remind myself like, oh man, I love editing. Like, this is great. And I get to talk. I love talking. I can write an outline. I love writing outlines and then talking about what's on the outline. And then I get to edit what I talked about. Like, this is great. I'm just totally loving this. So yeah, that's kind of the backstory about how I got to where I am today, where one of my jobs is to help manage the marketing and content creation at this little business. Well,
Graham, thanks for coming on the Alumni Lounge.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah, I'm glad I got to have you on.
It's really cool what you're doing here. And, I don't know, I think the takeaway that I have for my life and kind of what you're doing here too, is like, if you feel the spark from doing some kind of thing, in this example, it's AV, right? It's media creation. If you feel the spark for that, like, go after it, pursue it, and it can become like a big hobby for you. It can be a source of fulfillment. And it can even be like a job that you can get sometime too.
Yeah. Well, see you next time where stories collide and memories reside. Thanks so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, consider liking and subscribing to the Alumni Lounge, where stories collide and memories reside.